Welcome to the Summit on the MidwestSports.net YouTube channel and tonight live also on the OklahomaSports.net Twitter feed. Thanks for watching. And listen, I have an all-star lineup tonight as I go clockwise around the monitor. To my right on your monitor is Shawn Tiemann. Clockwise from him, Todd Miller, and then after that, Jay Lindly. I could read all that these men do in broadcasting from the high school level to the college level to the professional level, and it would take our entire broadcast. So I'd rather just get right on into it. Shawn Tiemann, the play-by-play voice from Rogers State, Todd Miller, play-by-play voice from Oklahoma Baptist, and Jay Lindly, the play-by-play voice from Southeastern Oklahoma State University. I'm just Joey. But I'm glad to be here with these guys tonight, and every one of them share at least one thing in common, and that is this. They are going to be in Maryville, Missouri this weekend as they're broadcasting games. Their teams have made it to the NCAA tournament, and it has been fantastic years for all of them. Shawn, let's just go ahead and start with you as I mentioned you first. Rogers State, a fantastic year, 24-6 on the year, 15-4 in the MIAA. Oh, and by the way, first year in the MIAA, the Hillcats came in and made a little noise in their first season.
Yeah, they did. I think, a coup for all of these Oklahoma schools to be in the central region at Maryville, try to slay the dragon, the big dragon in North State. Rogers State had, its best season in terms of wins in the Division II era, which is now their seventh year in Division II after moving up from NAI. So, 24-6 for Coach Justin Barkley, and probably could have had a couple of more wins, maybe three. So you'd be looking at a 26, 27, maybe 28 win season if they'd have played their cards right, and some other games that they ended up losing down the stretch, most notably a home game against Nebraska Kearney, ended up, getting some revenge in a road game against Kearney late in the year. But this team was really, really good at home, which has become a staple of Rogers State men's basketball now in its 13th year of the program's existence at the four-year college. Remember, Rogers State's only been a four-year school since 2000. So not only is the school still young, but the tradition of any of the athletic programs is still in its infancy. But for this program to do what they've done, not only at home, but this year on the road, counting neutral site games, 13-4, I think the record. They won the final 7 road games in the MIAA in conference play, having won 5 in a row to end the regular season. So while they were bumped off in the semifinals by Missouri Southern at the MIAA tournament in Kansas City, they took it to Missouri Southern February 1st at their place in Joplin, where they hardly ever lose either. In fact, that win for Rogers State snapped Missouri Southern's 26-game home court winning streak. Tough place to play, the environment, the crowd, it's pretty raucous. I enjoyed doing that broadcast. But yeah, Rogers State basketball is a program still continuing to rise. And that's what a lot of people in the state of Oklahoma, and sometimes even in the vicinity to Claremore, Oklahoma, which is Tulsa and the rest of Green Country, it's still, I think, a hidden gem. So to produce like they did this first year in the MIAA, I think not only pinned some ears back on some folks outside the league, but inside the conference, there were probably some people that didn't like what Rogers State did in finishing second in the regular season, upset the natural order a little bit. But this team right now is, despite the loss Saturday to Missouri Southern, supremely confident group. They're hard-nosed. They play physical, tough, yet disciplined. Missouri Southern had a player ejected in the first half against Rogers State on Saturday. Probably should have had a second guy ejected, but they come at you pretty hard defensively. And when Rogers State can guard the three-point line, which is basically, I think, their one snafu on defense this year at times. They've let some threes fly a little too much, but when they guard the three-point line, this is a team I think that could get to the Elite Eight. Could. Now, you got to go through Northwest Missouri State. The other 6 teams in the region know that as well. Some of them know it all too often.
Yes, and I agree with you about Roger State. I mean, it's one of those things. I know that you know intimately all the ins and outs of the program. You've been a part of it for so long, but an NAI program that did pretty well in its final years in the NAI and now in Division II, playing in the Heartland Conference for a number of years. And as that conference folded into and was absorbed by the Lone Star Conference, a couple of schools moved into the MIAA, and Roger State one of those. And I think it is very interesting as to how the Hillcats have come in there and made some noise right off the bat. Well, your places on the monitor shifted around just a little bit. Sorry about that. But Todd, hey, you're up here next to me now. So I'll go to you next then, since you're to the right there. Oklahoma Baptist, 22-9 on the year, 15-7 in the Great American Conference. And I know that when Coach Aker came in, he changed the culture a lot when he came in as the head coach last season. Did you expect this team to be where they are right now?
Oh, I think it's fair to say, Joey, that we're probably at this juncture playing with a little bit of house money. I think they were expected to be pretty good, pick third of the Great American Conference, but I think everybody thought clearly Southeastern and Southern Nazarene were better than everybody else, and that's just not really proven to be true this year, and Oklahoma Baptist had a big hand in that. But you were talking about Jason Aker and what he has accomplished. From 2015 to 2018, Oklahoma Baptist won 24 games. Jason won 16 in his first season, won 22 this season. So the job he has done in just 2 years has been mind-boggling. And, you know, he did it with a lot of the same guys last year that, of course, brought in some newcomers this year that kind of changed the roster a little bit. But he has been terrific on Bison Hill. You know, I marveled on Sunday afternoon just being to the Great American Conference title game because it occurred 6 years after Oklahoma Baptist had been first extended an invitation to join the Great American Conference, and only 3 years after they became eligible to win either a conference or an NCAA title. So the ascension has been very, very rapid. I agree with what Shawn said. I think the caliber of basketball, not just at Rogers State or Oklahoma Baptist or Southeastern or anywhere else in this state, is greatly underappreciated. You know, everybody talks about the quality or the lack thereof at the bigger schools. I've always said, come out and watch Division II basketball.
Right.
It's cheap, and the quality is very, very good. I mean, I don't think people understand how good the MIAA is and how good the Great American Conference is.
And, you know, the MIAA has been a known quantity for a long time. I think the Great American Conference really is starting to creep into the consciousness now. Of course, it has just been a conference for less than a decade now. And, Jay, you've been a part of this for a long, long time, as Southeastern has been one of the original members of the Great American Conference. Now, Oklahoma Baptist played in the title game for the GAC Tournament Championship this past weekend. Southeastern was slated to be there, upset in the first round, but this Southeastern team really is a special team in Durant. 23-8 on the year, 16-6 in Great American Conference play. Picked to finish first, wound up finishing second. Southern Nazarene had a pretty good season, but Southeastern, it's been a good year.
Well, I think the thing that first and foremost, and kind of echo what Todd had to say, I think that this year on the men's side of the conference, in regards to the Great American Conference, finally got a lot of respect. And that's obvious by 4 teams getting in. With Oklahoma Baptist falling to Henderson, a team that beat Southeastern twice this year, the easy thing would have been to have dropped Southern as Southeastern, said, Oklahoma Baptist, you're out, and Henderson, because you got the automatic bid, you're 7 or 8. So at least the committee saw how good basketball was. And I think a lot of that had to do with who Oklahoma Baptist played in the before conference began, who Southeastern played before conference began, so forth and so on. I think that strength of schedule certainly played a role in where these teams came from as far as within the Great American Conference. And it also helped that everyone across the board, even the bottom teams in the conference, with the exception of maybe Harding, all improved this season. As for Southeastern, you look at their resume, their record, their losses, if you can have a quality loss, 6 of those losses coming in the final minutes. You're talking about games that are 1 and 2 possession games. They, for some reason, at times this year just weren't able to finish. A lot of those times were on the road. And if you look at the Massey ratings, the Great American Conference Men's Conference has the top home court advantage in the Massey ratings. So I think Southeastern, a team, while their record at 23-8 maybe not be as flashy as some of the others within the conference, I think they're well tested. I just think that they got to figure out a way how to finish out some of these close games. They certainly have the tools to do so with a pair of first teamers in Adam Dworsky and Kevin Buckingham. Of course, Buckingham was Conference Player of the Year a year ago. You add in how Kellen Manick has developed over the course of this last year. I mean, last year was his first year back, basically, and without 2 years of playing regular basketball. I mean, he was redshirted, just kind of setting up there, dwindling away at Oral Roberts. Well, now he's back into playing shape. So I think that they've got the tools. The question is, can they figure out how to close out some of these close games? We're sitting here talking to Todd. One of those close games I just spoke of happened in Shawnee against Oklahoma Baptist. Another one of those games happened against Henderson State, not once, but twice. So if they can figure that out and turn the corner here in the national tournament, and I hope they can. If you look at this men's side of the bracket, top to bottom, there aren't many weak links in that deal. I mean, I think that Oklahoma Baptist, if they come out and can play defense the way I've seen them play defense, I'm not saying they can beat Northwest Missouri, but they can certainly hang with them for a good while. It's tough to say that anyone in this bracket can beat Northwest Missouri simply because they've got the resume. I mean, you're talking about 2 national championships in the last 2 years. You're talking about literally 61-1 over the last 2 seasons or something ridiculous like that. But this group this year, I think, is better paced to match them than what has happened in the last couple of years, considering they get to host at home.
I want to follow up on a point that Jay had just said. OBU's won 22 games this year, and there's, like Shawn said, probably a couple of games we could have won. But the statistic that's mind-boggling, and Jay knows this because he's been in the conference, he's seen the scores. The Bison are 8-1 this year in games decided by 4 points or less. 8-1. Usually when you draw up a schedule and you say you're going to play 9 games by 2 possessions, you hope to be just barely better than 500. They've won 8 of 9, and 10 of their last 12 have been games decided by 6 points or less. So,
and that's the deal. I mean, and I agree with you. I mean, being able to finish, Todd, is huge, especially where we're at in this juncture of the season.
Yeah. And Rashad Lewis and Shawn Lowry have been the guys that have really stepped it up. You know, Rashad had the game-winning jump shot on the baseline to beat Henderson State. He then had the assist to beat Southeastern to Deshaun Lowry. So, I mean, our seniors, there's only 3 of them, and all 3 of them are great. But, boy, they have really stepped up. And I think you can tell how valuable their leadership has been just by that 8-1 record in close games. The other thing, Jay was talking about Kellen Manick. Rashad Lewis had not really played in 3 years since transferring from Mercer. He sat out a year. Then he had a shoulder injury last year that forced him to take a red shirt. So this was really the first in-game action this year that he had in about 3 years. And honestly, at the start of the year, he looked like I thought he would. He was just almost like a caged animal that finally was able to get out and run free. Finally, he got himself under control. And I'll tell you what, he has been as clutch as anyone in this conference over the last 6 weeks.
Todd, how much has Oklahoma Baptist improved since Rogers State beat him pretty soundly in Claremore in Game 3 of the season for the Hillcats?
A lot, Shawn, and I'll tell you where it started. It started on the defensive end. When we went to Ada in November, I believe it was, late November, early December, they put nearly 100 points on us. And, I mean, the whole team was embarrassed. They were disgusted. The effort just wasn't defensively where Jason Aker thought it needed to be. And so from that point forward, they have really recommitted. Now, there's been games they've given up 90-plus, but some of those have been just against good offensive teams. I mean, in 3 meetings, they have not been able to stop East Central. East Central is a very difficult team to guard. But I think to answer your question, they have gotten a lot better, and it has started on the defensive end.
Well, guys, you've had a chance to watch some incredible basketball within the GAC and within the MIAA. Shawn, I want to go back to you then, and let's talk about some of those players. I know Jay's already gone through a lot, and I do want to go back and hit a couple of those as well. But you have some seniors that really seem to stand out and take over with Tavian Davis, a 4-year player there at Rogers State. But you get Sumner to come in, and transfer students, you just never know if they're going to be able to, continue maybe success, maybe be able to blossom. And on top of that, will a transfer student be able to gel with the rest of the program? Talk about that.
Yeah, buying in is huge for what Justin Barkley teaches and the way he coaches and his style. And I don't think the apple falls too far from the tree. His father, Clyde's been a coach in the high school ranks at Inola for a long, long time. You must play defense for Coach Barkley, not take possessions off. They do offensively like to push it when the opportunity arises. They're not just to slow the ball down and come across, get into the half court. You mentioned Marquise Sumner, the 1-year transfer. We have him just for his senior season. Would have loved to seen him for 3 or 4 years on College Hill and Claremore with this program. He is the team's leading scorer, almost 14 points a game. Came in from Stetson, a Division I. I think that's an Atlantic Sun school, if I'm not mistaken. But we had another Stetson transfer as well, Ricardo Lynch, who it hurt our depth when we lost him with a hand injury in the first month of the season. And hopefully they get him a medical. He'll be able to play on College Hill next year. But Marquise Sumner came in and took over as the guy when you need some shots to be made. He's been able to accomplish that. He feeds off Tavian Davis's energy. Here's a Muskogee kid who probably could have played football for a lot of different college programs, maybe even with his athleticism at the Division I level at some smaller schools. He's about 6 feet maybe at point guard, but he is cat quick. Probably would have been a defensive back, at the college level in football, but he has really developed. If you watched him as a freshman or even as a sophomore 2 years ago, boy, it's night and day. This season, he became the program's all-time single season and career assist leader. Just this past weekend, took over the all-time career steals leader, for the program. So he has done it not only with defense but offense, and he's improved from about a 20% three-point shooter to now about a 33% three-point shooter. While that's not great, Russell Westbrook's best season with the Thunder in the NBA was about 34%, 35% from three. So if you can get respectable as a point guard from three, they have to come out and honor that defensively. And if they do that, Tavian's quick enough to blow by you two off the dribble, and had a single game Rogers State program record, 12 assists a couple of games ago. So he's done it all at point guard and can defend you as well. So just the development of those two guys and meshing together. When Marquise Sumner at times does play the point, he's more of a two guard, and that suits his role. And those guys, with 7 new players total for this program this year, it was a bit of an unknown going into the season. Would they all come together? And not only did they have those 2 D1 transfers from Stetson, you're looking at Chris Miller.
All right, we may have lost Shawn for just a little bit there.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah, technical difficulties. We'll hope we'll get him back. But he had mentioned maybe a little bit of Wi-Fi problems. So, Todd, we'll move on over to you as we hope to get Shawn back in just a moment there. Todd, you were talking about Lewis. I want to go ahead and bring out Harrison Stoddard as well as Deshaun Lowry, and I hope that we have Shawn back. Shawn, are you back?
I am. Must have just been some Wi-Fi.
Yeah, Wi-Fi issues, but
Yeah.
But I appreciate that. Todd, as we go there, Harrison Stoddard, somebody that Coach Aker has said he'd like to send the offense through just about any time he has the chance, and someone that's really come around specifically in the month of February, big man in Deshaun Lowry.
Deshaun Lowry closed the regular season having scored double figures in 10 of his last 11 games. By far and away the best stretch he has played in 2 years. Deshaun, at the end of his senior season, looked like the guy we thought he was going to be last year when they brought him in for Wofford. He's an extremely hard worker. He just seems like it's all come together for him, both offensively and defensively. He's been extremely good on the glass. And you were asking about Harrison Stoddard. Stoddard, in my opinion, may be our best player. I think sometimes he gets overlooked by Rashad and Deshaun, and their leadership has been extremely valuable. But Harrison Stoddard, once in a while, when he did this on Saturday or Sunday, he'll have a game where he's not himself. But boy, you can count on that he's going to bounce back and have another good game. He's only 83 points away, and he's not yet complete through his junior season from 1,000 on Bison Hill. So Harrison Stoddard, who's an Oklahoma kid, came from Edmond North High School, won a state championship playing for now Southwestern Oklahoma State head coach Terry Evans. You're right. He and Lowry are big on the baseline. And that was the one thing that worried me going into the Henderson State game. Most of the time, OBU will have an advantage on the baseline. They may have an advantage, and Shawn could tell me better, than Northwest Missouri on the baseline. But Henderson State was able to negate that. And when people are able to negate that, that does give the Bison some problems. Do you agree, Shawn, having seen both teams, that OBU is probably better than Northwest Missouri on the baseline?
Yeah, potentially. It's a little deceptive because really Northwest Missouri is not that deep. 6'7".
No.
Maybe some games they'll play 8 guys. They're not overly physical, but they defend the passing lanes and on ball extremely well. If you have some size, you can maybe disrupt them a little bit. And I think that's why maybe Missouri Southern had some success, albeit in 2 losses their last couple of games against Northwest Missouri. They have length, though. You don't necessarily have to play a physical brand of basketball if you have that length. So while they're not great at rooting guys out and pounding you on the block or blocking a lot of shots, their guards out on the perimeter get after you pretty doggone hard. And it's tough to penetrate and crack that. They're just so efficient. It's the most efficient basketball team I've seen as an opponent to Rogers State in 13 seasons. They're just super good at shot making, high percentage looks, high percentage makes. I mean, they hit it from 3. They can score in the low post. While they're not great in terms of, guys with low post moves necessarily. I think the game of basketball at all levels has gone away from that. They don't have a Chris Miller like we do, who when he scores, it's 10 feet and in because he's got a good jump hook with both left and right hand. Northwest Missouri State is different, but they defensively, I think people take them for granted, maybe underrate them a little bit. They had I told you guys this before you hit the button to go live, against Missouri Western, the 4 seed in the semifinals Saturday in Kansas City, the MIAA tournament. They were down 2 at halftime. 31-29, Missouri Western had a lead on Northwest Missouri. Second half, much different story. Northwest Missouri ends up winning the game 80-54 or 80-56. It wasn't even close. It looked like a whole different ball game in the second half. So they give you maybe for about a 3-minute stretch a glimmer of hope that you're actually in the game and competing against them, and then they just crush your soul. It's impressive to watch.
I will say this, guys. I think a big concern for OBU is the health of Deshaun Lowry. Joey, you saw that on Sunday. He went down with what looked to be an ankle injury, and I haven't talked to Jason. I'll see him tomorrow on campus, but it looked to me to be a high ankle sprain. Now, knowing Deshaun, he's going to try to play, but how much he can play, how effective he can play remains to be another thing. I will say this. It's nice that this game isn't on a Thursday. It does give him a couple of more days to heal up as best as he can, but if Deshaun Lowry does not play, that is not going to be good at all for OBU.
Well, and I'll tell you this, and Todd, because whenever we're doing the conference tournament, they pass out the ballots, and it's MVP if so-and-so wins MVP. Deshaun was my MVP for y'all in that tournament, only because I'm sitting there watching the box score in the championship game, because I wanted to wait. I wanted to wait until about halftime and see who was doing what in the championship game. And like you mentioned, Stoddard at that point was like 0 for 6 and was making no impact.
Yeah.
Lowry was the guy that I thought gave y'all something to go against Raquan Rogers. I mean, because Rogers was just a complete beast the whole tournament. So, yeah, I agree with you on Deshaun. And if it would be unfortunate if you guys don't have him against Northwest, because I think that does damage any real shot that you would have, just because I think he's been that key. I saw what he did to Southeastern at Oklahoma Baptist in Shawnee. His interior presence, not necessarily as a scorer, but as a defender, he's really certainly turned the corner from where he was a year ago.
I can tell you, I think he'll try to. I mean, not having talked to anybody, I think he'll try to go just because of the type kid he is. But you just wonder how much he has in the tank. Speaking of MVP, I had gone with Rashad Lewis for MVP. He had 27 in the championship game. He did have one game, and I believe it was in the semifinals against Southern Nazarene, that he didn't play particularly well from a scoring standpoint. But boy, did he really step up when the lights were bright on Sunday afternoon.
Todd piqued my interest talking about, a local homegrown kid in Stoddard. Let's touch on that. I mean, these three rosters, this state, people may not know.
Right,
if you read some books on small college basketball written in this state, it's been good for decades, maybe 100 years. There are some Oklahomans, like what Rogers State has found in Brewster Peacock from down the road in Verdigris, a junior guard / forward, playing more forward, but add him to the list of like Jet Sternberger, a Kingfisher
Shawn,
freshman
this year, and was
about
Jet. Has he surprised you a little bit?
Who? Peacock?
Sternberger.
Oh, Sternberger. Yeah, not at all.
He's played at a very high level for you guys in a very good conference just coming out of high school.
Yeah,
I can tell you, I'm friends with Michael Swisher up in Kingfisher, and I watched Sternberger the whole time and that whole little run they had. It didn't surprise me, Todd. Like, I thought that guy was the one guy that I saw in all of 4A to a degree that would make an easy transition into D2 basketball.
I'll say this.
I thought he was outstanding in high school.
Offensively, it was right away you knew. He can shoot. He's deceptive at getting guys up, moving around, and then driving around him. While he's not the fastest kid on the floor, obviously, he does some good work handling the ball. Where he had to make an adjustment was the speed of the game defensively for him. And I think it took him about a month and a half, maybe 2 months to get his bearings on that end. He has started every single game. He's on his way to being better than our best program player ever in J.C. Hartzler, who was really good, obviously Tulsa Union guy. So this is the kind of player, though, just speaking to Oklahomans on all three of the rosters for RSU, OBU, and Southeastern, that you have to have at the Division II level. And, oh, by the way, some of these guys are really high-level Division II players, and they are contributing, a lot of them right away to their programs. And Rogers State, has a roster of guys from outside the state for sure. And Coach Barkley has always mixed in, though, some guys from 3A, 4A schools in this state that have turned into absolute gems. And I don't know how he does it, but he rarely misses on any of them.
Well, I appreciate that, guys, and that's a very good point, talking about the high school players, especially the men's players. We've seen this play out in recent years, and very, very recently in 2018, 2019 on the women's side, because of all the good women's basketball players that come from the state of Oklahoma. You don't have to look any farther back than Southwestern playing for a national championship last year with a roster that was comprised almost entirely, with the exception of one player from Europe, almost entirely of Oklahoma girls, and even just pretty much west of I-35 if you want to get specific. But we talk about those players, and they do deserve to be mentioned. There's a lot of talent within the state of Oklahoma. Well, here we are on MidwestSports.net on the YouTube channel. And before we go on past this question, we didn't get to Jay yet. So, Jay, I'm going to let you finish that up, talk about a couple of players here, and then we will talk about this bracket really quickly. Jay, I know two of the big names for Southeastern. You mentioned them already, but address this again, because these are two of very special players for Southeastern in their history in Kevin Buckingham, who is now in the top three in scoring and in rebounding. I believe he's now the leader in rebounding. Adam Dworsky, who's now the leader in assists all time in Southeastern's program, which has seen some very quality players come through in the last decades. I appreciate what you said about that. I mean, these are good programs now in Division II, many of these schools, but they were in the NAI. But Jay, talk about Kevin and Adam and what they meant to the team.
Now, Buckingham's not atop the rebounding list, and you know this because there's one Dennis Rodman that will dominate that.
Well,
list
I know that, but
forever.
he's atop the GAC rebounding
Yes,
list. How about that?
He is. Buckingham, I mean, you're talking about a 2,000-point scorer. Dorsky, you're talking about a guy that is a 1,000-point scorer, a guy that this season set the single-season conference record for assists, the career record for assists at Southeastern. He'll likely set the career record for assists next year. Now, while it's easy to point on those two guys, the one thing that I always say, though, about Dorsky, and trust me, Todd's seen him. he is amazing at what he does. But you got to have guys hit shots in order to get assists. And I think that's one thing that sometimes gets overlooked is while Buckingham and Dorsky are the mainstays, Manick has developed into a great leader. Manick is the only forward in the league to average 3 assists a game. So he's always looking for a guy with an open shot. You got Kyle Gonzalez that up until a cold spell a couple of weeks ago was leading the nation in three-point shooting at 51% from beyond the arc. So in order for those guys to have success, it's really kind of a team effort. And in looking at everyone's numbers, just breaking down numbers. The one thing that's interesting about looking at this bracket overall, because obviously I've been studying Rogers State, you guys are very comparable to what Southeastern is as far as the numbers go. And I think you got to have those type of teams. It can't be at this level. You can't have just one or two guys. You better have multiple options. And all three of us sitting here that are going to be calling games coming up on Saturday, every one of these teams don't have one, don't have two, but have 3 and 4 scoring options. And that's the reason those teams are there. And also every one of those teams have somebody that was a Division I guy that it didn't work out for, and then they found their way back to a Division II program. That's one thing that's very constant amongst all these teams, with except, maybe Northwest Missouri. They've only got one guy that's not necessarily a homegrown guy there at Northwest Missouri State.
Rogers State has had 8 different leading scorers this season, if that's some evidence for you.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, and you need that. I mean, you need that type of balance because good and well, everyone in the gym's going to know that Kevin Buckingham was the second leading scorer in the conference and conference player of the year. They're going to know about Adam Dorsky and the 3-to-1 assist ratio. They're going to know those things. So you need guys like Kellen Manick and Kyle Gonzalez to step up and get 15 to 20 points and take a little bit of the load off of those guys in order to be successful. If not in round 1, it'll happen in round 2. It'll happen in round 3. However far you go, you've got to have some unknown commodities produce.
Well, let's look at that bracket then for just a moment here as I'm able to pull this up right now. I don't know if you guys already know it, so we can look at that right there. But the bracket as it comes up for you right now, Division II, this is a central region, of course, one of 8 regions in the NCAA Division II. And the bracket has Northwest Missouri State, the top seed, taking on Oklahoma Baptist. We'll talk about that in a moment. Number 4 seed, Northern State against Missouri Southern. And then it is the 2 seed Southern Nazarene taking on Henderson State. And finally, Southeastern taking on Rogers State. And that is a pretty solid bracket. I mean, that's pretty impressive to look at. Let me go ahead and start with you, Todd, up there at the top as you look, and you have a daunting task taking on Northwest Missouri State in Maryville, a team with ridiculous numbers over the past 3 seasons, 2 national championships in the last 3 years, 1 loss over the last 2 seasons, and you got to play them on their home court. I know Shawn's already seen them, and before we came on the air was talking about just how strong they are. But as you prepare for this game, what do you see as the matchup?
Again, I think OBU is going to have some success down low, and they're going to have to limit them to 1 shot and out. Just what little I've seen, at least to this point. I mean, they don't miss much. Their numbers are unreal. Shawn and I were talking about this before we came on. They played 32 games this year, and in 22 of those 32 games, they've shot over 52%. That's ridiculous. They shot almost 54% in 3 games in the MIAA tournament last week. So when you do, on the off chance, get them to miss a shot, you've got to get to the board. You can't give them second and third opportunities. And OBU is going to have to somehow protect the basketball. It's going to be a difficult task because there will be 2,500 fans packed into that place, all working against you. But and as I said, look, man, I'm just excited to have the chance. I know that Jason Aker is excited to have the chance. The guys are excited to beat the best. To be the best, you've got to beat the best. And if nothing else, this is a learning experience, because the one thing that Missouri Southern has over about everybody is their experience. They played so many games over the last few years. I think experience this time of year is a big, big factor. But I think rebounding is certainly the key in protecting the basketball.
To cut in, I agree with you, Todd, only because I've been glancing at Northwest numbers. Their opponents average 24 rebounds a game, which means, one, they're not – most of their opponents are getting it out of the net, and then, two, their opponents aren't getting them to one and out, you know? So I agree. Yeah. I think that's key for y'all.
No, and their guards, like I mentioned earlier on the perimeter for Northwest Missouri, outstanding. Maybe two of the best in the nation. With the point guard, probably should be at Kansas State. They should have recruited that kid. He's from Manhattan. Hudgens. And Diego Bernard.
And he's a sophomore.
As a two guard. Him and his sister are both on number 1 ranked teams at Division II. Sister from Drury. Both are St. Joe folks out of Missouri Western. Not land him, obviously. He wanted to go play at a program that's really just beating the tar out of everybody the last several years. But they're just so efficient on offense, and you're one and done at the other end. Like you just don't get many opportunities against them. Rogers State only played them once, down 3 at 48-45 with 11 minutes to go in Maryville. A 16-0 run ensued the next 3 to 4 minutes, 10 lights out. You only give up 74 points. Rogers State's other games, if they've given up 74 points, they're in that game with a good shot to win it.
Oklahoma Baptist 22-9 on the year, taking on Northwest Missouri, and the Bearcats are 31-1 on the year, hosting the Central Region, the top seed. So we get to the other game in the Central Region. I know there are 2 more. We won't talk about them here because Jay and Shawn get to talk about the Wren Baker Classic that's going to be taking place in the Central Region bracket. And, okay, Jay, we'll start with you. Southeastern is the 3 seed coming in, lost in the semifinals of the GAC tournament, didn't drop in the final regional rankings, 23-8, taking on Rogers State. What do you see from the Savage Storm?
One, Kevin Buckingham typically doesn't follow up a crap game with a crap game. And he had a really, really bad game against Henderson State. He got into foul trouble early. He just wasn't in flow, and he fouls out. He plays a total of 16 minutes in that total game. It's funny because I go back and look at things. His 2 worst games over the last 2 years were against Henderson State. He had a game that he fouled out at Bloomer Sullivan Arena, which was their only home loss a year ago, and he had 4 points against Henderson State. So that's an anomaly. That's not the rule. And I'm willing to bet that Buckingham comes out a little bit more focused than he was this past Saturday afternoon. If all things are equal, and of course I heard Shawn's description of the point guard, and I haven't got to really watch much as of yet, but I think that those things even up, and I think you could be in for a real dogfight. I mean, you look at the numbers and getting a sense of what each team likes to do defensively and offensively, it would not the least bit surprise me if this is one of those games that are, decided in the final minute of a game. I think that they're both very evenly matched. I think that in order for Southeastern to be successful, I think Buckingham has to come out and be Buckingham. He's got to go get 22-8. And I think that, if Dorsky is as hot as he has been, and my goodness, Adam Dorsky has just been, I think going into this season, you could have easily said, oh, this is Kevin Buckingham's team. And I think now at this point, it's Adam and Kevin's team. And I think that is huge to Adam, because Adam wasn't this forceful of a scorer a year ago. And now all of a sudden he's got that confidence, and man, he's like really shown it the last 2 or 3 weeks. So I think that from that standpoint, the only thing that agitates me a little bit is Kyo's numbers slipping a little bit. Now it's easy to say, it's easy for the fat guy in the recliner to say he's slipping, shooting 37% from beyond the arc over the last 4 games or whatever. I mean, but he is a guy that got you, thinking every time he threw one up, 1 out of every 2 was going in. So if he gets back into a flow of things, I think he could. He certainly showed signs of it against Henderson State. Then I think that Southeastern's got a legit shot. Like I said, at this point, there are no gimmies. I would like to think that what Todd was talking about, I hope experience helps a little bit. I mean, I can tell you last year's win over Northern State was the greatest comeback I've ever seen in person, and it's certainly the greatest one I've ever been a part of to call. So hopefully that experience carries over to this week. Because I know Rogers is just now getting this opportunity. But I'm with Todd. I mean, you're never going to turn down the opportunity to call an NCAA tournament. I got my first opportunity to do it last year, and it's a blast. And, as long as this train goes, hey, I told you had me on 2 or 3 weeks ago. I said, hopefully when this thing's done, I'll look like Methuselah. I've still got a month left the way I see it.
You're shooting for it. I guarantee you that. You are definitely shooting for it. Well, Southeastern, of course, you mentioned that too, by the way, with the win over Northern State last year and advanced to the regional semifinals. For Oklahoma Baptist, we talked about this. It's their first NCAA tournament appearance. For Rogers State, the first NCAA tournament appearance. And by the way, Shawn, as you talk about, what you see from the Hillcats now going into the game, they come in with a number 18 ranking as well, as that's come out just, I believe, today. So, a pretty good ranking and some momentum coming into the end of the season. Fell in the semifinals of the MIAA tournament. But, what do you see as they match up against Southeastern?
Yeah, dropped 3 spots from last week, reached all the way up to number 15 last week going into the MIAA conference tournament. But this is a team that, and these other guys would attest to this, I think 2 through 8 is pretty evenly matched. Now, Rogers State is 3-0 against the GAC this season. Their first 3 games. And really in the second half, those games weren't close. I say that. They raced out to like a 17-0 lead to begin the game against Henderson. I wasn't at that game, was doing some Bixby High School football at the time. But they still feel slighted, though, in the region rankings. There were some officiating issues against Missouri Southern in the semi on Saturday. They like their draw. They'd like to be the GAC champs and go into the regional championship game to face Northwest Missouri State. These guys, because of having a lot of Division I transfers, are still playing with a chip on their shoulder and feel slighted still. They feel like they have a lot to prove. And so I think they're going into this regional with the utmost confidence. They know, though, that all these other teams are about even. Like I said, outside of Northwest Missouri State, they are the prohibitive and heavy favorite to win this thing and go to the Elite Eight. Nobody is giving anybody else really a chance except maybe the guys in the locker rooms of all the other teams. Missouri Southern might say, yeah, well, they beat us at their place in Maryville last couple of weeks of conference play with a buzzer shot by Hudgens, the point guard. Then they only beat us by 2 for the conference championship this past Sunday in Kansas City. But, all of these other teams are confident that they can go in and at least do something against the other squads. So RSU really, their main issue, as I mentioned a few minutes back, defensively has been covering the 3-point line with some aggression. At times can leave some guys open. And Southeastern shoots about 38, 39% from 3 on the year, Jay. So
yeah, 39, yeah.
You can't leave a lot of guys open from 3. They have, over the years under Coach Barkley, the bread and butter has been the defense. So when there are big games and big moments at hand, they've risen to the occasion. And I think they'll do that at least in round 1 against Southeastern, because they feel like maybe the regional ranking should have been flipped and they should have been the 3 seed. I don't think it really matters at this point. But those guys in the locker room,
uniform color.
yeah, they might feel like, hey, they have a good draw because they don't have to see a conference opponent potentially until the regional finals if they can get there. They're all going to be tough games, though. I'm glad from a broadcast perspective, I don't have to watch Cam Martin of Missouri Southern and Ryan Hawkins of Northwest Missouri in the first or second round, potentially. We only played Northwest Mo once, Missouri Southern twice, once in the regular season, and scored 105 on them at their place. And the fans in Joplin were absolutely stunned as to what they were seeing. They're like, where's this school? What? It used to be a military academy back in the 40s and 30s. I mean, they don't know. Now they know, I think. And the schools like OBU know Rogers
State.
They got
used to whipping up on Northeastern year in and year out.
Well, we haven't played Southeastern since 2010, but we're 2-1 against the Savage Storm when we were NAI, and obviously they were D2. So Coach Barkley will have them ready. I think it's going to come right down to the end. I really do against Southeastern. It's a good shooting team. They've got a lot of parts that contribute, just like Rogers State. And like Jay mentioned, you have to have at least 3-4 guys that can go get you a bucket in crunch time if you're going to advance in the tournament. So I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. It'll be my first Division II national tournament game on Saturday to broadcast. And I'll say this, guys, maybe you've done games at Maryville at Northwest Mo. It will remind you of Rogers State's home court at the Claremore Expo Center because it is not that big. There's not two levels like at Southwestern Oklahoma State in the arena. It's just one level. There's not many rows. Now, maybe behind the goals, it's a little expansive, but they put curtains up. So it's not huge, depth perception. It's a smaller venue, and it gets really, really loud when you're playing Northwest Missouri in there. I would imagine if Southeastern and Rogers State bring fans from Durant and Claremore, it's going to be pretty great atmosphere to watch a college basketball game at this level.
I will say this, when the brackets came out, that was the game that I was looking at, Rogers State and Southeastern. I think it's the best first-round matchup. I think it's a game that could go either way, and I think it tells you how darn tough this region is when a team like Rogers State's the number 6 seed. So I think you guys have a great game to call on Saturday.
It should be fun, and I do want to give you all a chance to plug your stations where they can listen to you. Anyone listening, some places within the state of Oklahoma may not be able to pick it up on the radio dial, but on the internet you can as well. Well, gentlemen, really quickly then, a couple of questions to wrap this up, and ordinarily I might spend a little bit more time on these, but the conversation's been fantastic. You all bring such good things to the table, and you always do. It's just such a privilege to get to have you all on with me tonight on this live stream here on the Summit. So ordinarily I would ask this from the standpoint, you're the panel. Does the panel accept this premise? So here is premise number 1. And actually it's going to be our only premise tonight because the next one I'll make is a question. Premise number 1. With the women's bracket and everything taking place in Warrensburg, Missouri, 2 teams from the state of Oklahoma, since you're all Oklahoma broadcasters right now, 2 teams from the state of Oklahoma made the Central Region Tournament. Southwestern, the defending national runners-up, came in as the 8th seed. They'll take on Central Missouri. Southeastern, the Great American Conference champions, regular season, and now tournament champions, made it in as the 5 seed. Will take on Emporia State. So here's the premise. Do you accept this or not? I'll start with you, Todd, and we'll go through it quickly. A women's basketball team from Oklahoma will win at least one game in the NCAA tournament.
I will accept that.
Okay. Todd accepts that. Jay, a women's basketball team from Oklahoma will win a game in the tournament, and this hits close to home for you.
Yes. I'll say both, and then we'll play Southwestern, and we'll beat them again. No, I ain't going that far.
Well, Southwestern did defeat Central Missouri in the tournament last year in the semifinal game at a buzzer beater from Tabor Beer. So she goes down in Southwestern.
A little bit different roster, Joey.
Definitely a different roster. No doubt about that. And UCM, I think, has the better end of the deal there. Go ahead, Shawn. Does the panel accept this as a whole? An Oklahoma women's basketball team will win a game.
Sure, why not? I'm not an Oklahoma native born, but yeah, let's root for the Okies.
All right. Panel accepts that one. Okay, we'll take it. Then the next one, this is a question, and again, short answer, keep us here, but I think this is a good question. Which one of these is more significant? and I think the first one I'm going to say is pretty significant. 4 teams making the Division II tournament in the men's basketball bracket in the Central Region, 4 teams from the Great American Conference, or 4 teams from the state of Oklahoma. Todd, which one's more significant?
Obviously, being an Oklahoma guy, I think it's terrific. They're all from Oklahoma, or 3 of the 4 from Oklahoma. But I've got to say, this is terrific for the Great American Conference. And this region, when you compete with the MIAA and the Northern Sun to get 4 of the 8 in this region, I think that's great for the league.
By the way, before I go any farther, I just wanted to talk about you guys, but don't forget Southern Nazarene is also in that bracket. So don't want to leave out the Crimson Storm, who, by the way, have had pretty stellar years in the last 2 or 3 years as well. Jay, which one is more significant, Oklahoma or the GAC?
I have to agree with Todd, just simply from the standpoint of you're talking about a conference that's really still fledgling, if you think about it, and they're having to go up against. And I think this says a lot about what Rogers State has done this year. They're having to go up against conferences like the Northern Sun and the MIAA that have that history, that have that tradition, that have some of the stuff that I like to throw out the window. I mean, simply because it's not always about the tradition. Sometimes things just pass the eye test. And I think what Rogers did, kind of turning the MIAA on its head, that's what I was saying a moment ago, Shawn, was they got used to watching Northeastern. They didn't know Oklahoma schools could play basketball. So with Rogers doing what they did in the MIAA, I was, highly impressed. But I think it's better for the conference because the Great American Conference, I think, has had good basketball for the last 2 or 3 years. I truly believe this year was its best in the men's side, top to bottom, just because you had a 5 conference win team in Northwestern going down and beating teams like Monticello and Henderson, people like that on the road. I just thought it was a really good conference. I thought they were rewarded for it.
They were rewarded for it. All right, now you get an outsider's perspective to an extent, although you talked about Rogers State having played the GAC teams in the early season, Shawn. Which one stands to be more significant of an accomplishment this year, 4 teams from the state of Oklahoma or 4 teams from the GAC making the tournament?
I'll say 4 teams from the state of Oklahoma. I really think people don't know what goes on in this state with basketball at all levels. There have been a lot of basketball players come out of this state and have a huge success at the highest levels of the game, including the NBA. So I just think people don't know that.
All right. Well, panel, it has been a blast, and I really, really appreciate your time tonight. I hope I haven't taken up too much of your family time because I know you guys are about to hit the road and head north. There's a possibility I may be up there. There's a very real possibility I'm watching you guys on the internet and listening to your broadcasts where I can, so I can get all the games that are going on. So, Todd, I'll let you start this. If you're in the state of Oklahoma and you can listen anywhere around the Shawnee area, where do they find your broadcast?
KGFF, AM 1450, FM 100.9, on the web at kgff.com or obubison.com.
All right, Jay, where do they listen to you?
Just go to 96.1 in Durant, Mix 96.1, or you just go to gosoutheastern.com, and there's a whole list of station affiliates. There's 4 ranging from here to McAllister and south, and then over to DeQueen, Arkansas.
Better question with Jay is, where can't you hear him?
I know, I'm loud everywhere. Hey, it's a thing.
He has built up the Southeastern. Yeah, he's built up that Southeastern network where you can hear him pretty much from Arkansas to New Mexico and the the Rio Grande, pretty much to the northern border of the U.S. I'm telling you, it's a wide span. Well, Shawn, I don't know if you can outdo that, but where do they listen to you? Where do they watch you?
First, Jay's nickname is Multimedia Lindly. Too long, probably too lengthy. RSU has the benefit of, for a long time, having campus radio, which is college radio, not public radio, NPR style, but alternative music. And it's one of the most listened to in the city of Tulsa. 91.3 FM on the dial. All the folks there, Tip Crowley, who runs the station, they do a great job. Also, they have RSU public television and games during conference play. It would be January, February, end up being on television as well. So Royal Ales runs a TV station. They do a great job. So 91.3 FM. You can pick it up probably from Claremore to Muskogee in the Tulsa area as well. Online, probably the best way is to go to rsuradio.com. And you can also do it at the athletic department's website, rsuhillcats.com.
Well, all right, gentlemen. Thank you so very much for being on the summit with me. I really respect you all so greatly, and seriously, you do a fantastic job. Again, if you have not had the privilege of getting to listen to any one or all three of these guys calling a broadcast, well, you may get a chance flip back and forth on that Southeastern Rogers State game. You could hear one or the other there, depending upon who happens to be winning at the time. Just flip over there and
hear the ebb and flow.
Yeah, hear the ebb and flow just a little bit. But from the high school level to the college level to the professional level, these guys have been there, done that, and they do a fantastic job. So thank you again for watching the summit tonight or today. If you're watching this rebroadcast on the YouTube channel, please subscribe to this YouTube channel because we are all about small college in the Midwest area in Oklahoma and Arkansas, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, Iowa, and even beyond those borders as well. So for Todd Miller and for Jay Lindley, Shawn, Tiemann, I am just Joey. Thank you for listening tonight. God bless you all and have a great night.